Every time you turn on the lights, you are using energy generated by a nearby power plant. Our grid is old and it's constantly busy, but how does it really work? Well, our friends at Canary Media explain how it works.
The continental U.S. doesn't have one electricity grid, it has three: the Western Interconnection, the Eastern Interconnection, and the Texas Interconnection. Canadian provinces are a part of the interconnections too, even Quebec, sometimes. Power generated within these regions can be shared across state lines along high-voltage transmission lines as part of the bulk power system. The reliability and security of these systems is under the purview of NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation. There are 6 regional reliability entities: the Western Electricity Coordinating Council, Texas Reliability Entity, the Midwest Reliability Organization, CERC Reliability Corporation, Reliability First, and the Northeast Power Coordinating Council. These organizations do not deliver power directly to homes and businesses. That's left to local utilities, which are overseen by state and local regulatory organizations. Instead, they develop and enforce mandatory standards and monitor the adequacy of the bulk power system.
That was really good.
So
that was really
informative.
helpful.
I love when they do that. Many of our
really good.
states are plugging into this renewable energy where they can. But for places out west that use the Colorado River as a source of hydropower, we're going to need a backup plan there. For years,
Yeah.
that's been the driving force behind the TransWest Express. After nearly 2 decades, the project finally has approval it needs.
All right, so Jeff St. John is the Director of News and Special Projects at Canary Media, and he joins us with an update on this. First, let's start off with, thanks for being with us, by the way. We really appreciate you coming on, Jeff, to talk about this. What is the TransWest Express?
It is an enormous transmission line that's going from Wyoming to California. It's being developed by an entity that's owned by Philip Anschutz, a oil billionaire and big sports and publishing owner, who's also developing an enormous wind farm up in Wyoming. Wyoming has really good wind power. California needs a lot of clean energy. And the idea is to move that wind power from Wyoming to California.
So,
with some stops along the way.
How do you move it? Is this just basically like a line you put on the ground? Is it underground? How does it transfer from that state to California?
This one is a large overhead transmission line. It's going to be crossing mountains and deserts. There are other options. There's a big power line that's running from Canada to New York that's going partly underground under the Hudson River. And there's some other power lines being designed that might run along railroad and highway rights-of-way through underground high-voltage direct current cables. But this one is the old-fashioned overhead line you might often think of.
Jeff, it seems pretty absurd to have something in Wyoming delivering power all the way down into Southern California. Why couldn't we do something closer or use that energy in Wyoming for those areas in the vicinity of it?
Well, it could be used for them, but California is where the load is, the demand for electricity. And remember, that video noted that the U.S. is interconnected via transmission lines that carry power hundreds, thousands of miles. That's good for developing clean energy because renewables are very strong in some places. The Southwest Desert has good solar, the Upper Plains states and some Rocky Mountain states have good wind. But the loads are often on the coast or in major urban centers, and it's a lot cheaper to carry electricity thousands of miles than it is to pipe, say, fossil fuels or something like that.
So we have this partnership, right, with folks out west, whether it's California, Wyoming, Arizona's tapping into some of that. Are we going to see more and more situations like this where, let's say you're a coastal community, you're trying to find ways to provide clean energy through means of, ocean waves, and you're going to be pumping that to different places that don't have a coast? Are we going to be sharing, so to speak, this green energy and dispersing it that way?
Well, we already do, and we need to do a lot more of it. There are studies out there that indicate that to hit the clean energy targets that the Biden administration has set, we're going to need to double or triple the amount of transmission grid capacity that we've got around the country. And that's going to cost potentially hundreds of billions of dollars. But the benefits of doing that, both in terms of reducing the carbon emissions and of actually reducing the cost for electricity for folks who use it, the benefits outweigh the cost. This is the cheapest form of electricity, new wind and solar power, and getting it available not only helps people reduce the cost, but actually makes the grid more reliable. If you can transmit stuff across long distances, places that are getting hit with winter storms and the like might be able to pull power from places that aren't.
Will this provide power for the states that it's traveling through on its way to California, or is direct from Wyoming down into California?
Well, this is a merchant transmission line, which means it's run by a developer who is finding customers for that power at the other end of the line. It's important to note, though, that this line does run through Utah and right alongside a project called the Advanced Clean Energy Storage Project, or ACES project, which is one of the largest projects in the country that's looking to use electricity to make hydrogen by splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen via electrolysis, and then store that hydrogen in enormous underground salt caverns, a natural feature of the geography there. And then you can pull that hydrogen up to maybe burn to spin a power turbine with zero carbon emissions, since hydrogen doesn't emit carbon, and maybe use that hydrogen to do stuff like fuel steel making or cement making, or even fuel long-range transport. So there are possibilities for this power to serve multiple needs.
A lot of these states have set up goals that they want to hit by a certain year. Will this tack on to that list of, okay, we've got, we're inching closer to these green goals now in California, let's say?
It could certainly help California. California does import a significant amount of its electricity. And it's important to remember that in California, the big crunch for electricity is after the sun goes down, when all that solar power fades away. But say it's a hot summer evening, everyone's running their ACs. That's caused us in California to get pretty close to some grid emergencies. But the wind works best at night. The wind blows harder at night. And out in Wyoming, that wind could come in and help kind of like replace some of that lost solar power. Diversity of renewable resources is a really important concept to remember here.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense.
Seems like that's a good life lesson, to diversify everything. Jeff St. John, Director of News and Special Projects at Canary Media, thank you so much for joining us and explaining that to us. Because who knew? It's one of those types of things.
And how long is it going to take? I wonder. I should have asked
for the energy to travel from there to there.
Yeah, and just to get it all running, get it good to go. We got the approval now, so now everything's setting it up, putting that transmission line overhead, that many, 1,000 miles or so.
Well, if you have a lot of money, you can make it happen very quickly.
Yeah.